progress with our first speaker session this morning. And I'm delighted that the two first speakers are actually from my old stomping ground, Queen's University in Belfast. And our first speaker is Dr. Kevin Morgan. And Kevin is a lecturer in chemistry and chemical engineering in Queen's University. And Kevin, I think you should be able to screen share, hopefully. And we'd be delighted to hear your presentation this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Morgan and I'm from Queen's University, as Geraldine has kindly introduced. My presentation this morning is on the student preparation for participation in what was virtual chemical engineering practical classes, but also going to talk about what we have retained since then. And just to give some educational context, the chemical engineering labs were for levels 1 and 2. It's a practical class. We have about approximately 50 students per class, and these classes can last around a minimum of 2 hours. The intended learning outcomes for our practical classes are students learn how to work safely in a lab, become more familiar with the instrumentation, and they understand how that instrumentation works. The students are then able to assess, process, and interpret the data. And one of the important things is obviously they're able to communicate their findings through whatever style of reporting that we adopt. So the practical class, it's made up of 3 primary components. We have our pre-lab, which is covering the procedure, the health and safety, any preparatory calculations, and some additional reading. We then focus on the practical skills. And this is about the hands-on experience, about their observation skills, how they work as a team, and making sure that they're operating safely, and also making sure they're collecting their data. And this is followed up with their post-lab, which is applied calculations, their analysis evaluations, applying critical thinking, and developing those communication skills in their report writing. So largely, in terms of the preparation, our pre-existing pre-labs were all very general and generic, and this was the same regardless of the experiment. And from my point of view, this never allowed the students to properly prepare. And in fact, it allowed a very surface approach to those pre-labs. So that was one thing I was changing prior to COVID. And I was focused very much on that student preparation. That's where video came in. And so preparation is key. I wanted to encourage a deep approach to learning so that they would foster a better application, analysis, evaluation, and recreation. We all know practical classes are very expensive, but one of the most wild pedagogical methods. And for that reason, they're also a unique learning activity where you have relatively small numbers of groups working directly with a more experienced practitioner. The success of students in the lab is not solely reliant on how they prepare. It's all about the design of the practicals and assessments. So we have to help them to prepare through the design of our assessments and assignments for them. And so targeted pre-labs have been demonstrated to improve that student confidence, decrease their anxiety, and that alone can help them in their preparations for those practical experiments. Obviously in COVID, we had to adapt our plans and we had to take on some alternative provision. The way that I did this was the guise of flipped classroom, where I front loaded all of the content with video of what the students would do, provide them with data so they could critically analyze it, and then there would be live in-person live virtual Q&A sessions with the teaching assistants. So the students would complete their pre-lab as normal, but a more targeted and focused pre-lab. This would be accompanied by a short instructional video to help them with that pre-lab. Then they'd be given those data sets. Also, with all assignments, there were pre-published rubrics to help them understand what their learning outcomes were and what they would be assessed against. And then the students would join those live interactive sessions. And the purpose of the sessions was to be engaging, offering students an opportunity to clarify, offering them a sense of community when they are working remotely, and as an opportunity for direct interaction with teaching assistants, the opportunity for those students to interrogate the teaching assistants, but also for those teaching assistants to ask questions of the students to make sure that they are meeting those learning outcomes. So what did the students see? Well, this was the new pre-lab page where all their information was contained. So they had their procedure, their risk assessment, and they had direction towards the pre-lab assignment and the post-lab. Then they also had their familiarization video, which was embedded below this. I'm just going to play this briefly so that you can get an idea of what we've done. These were all shot in the first person. This was giving the students an opportunity to see what it would have been like for them.
This is the shell and tube heat exchanger experiment. The objective of this is to become familiar with the principle of heat transfer and to observe it in a shell and tube heat exchanger, and using our calculated values of heat transfer to determine the heat transfer efficiency at different cold water flow rates in the heat exchanger.
So I'm not going to let you see the whole 4 minutes, obviously, but it's important to note it's shot firsthand. The student gets the experience as the view they would have had. It's done with a GoPro, so a standard piece of equipment that any cyclist would wear. So, I mean, you don't need this high-end production to be able to deliver this. And obviously, right at the start, you saw the teaching assistant was introducing what the main learning outcomes was, just to revise that. And then the teaching assistant goes through each of the components and explains every step of the experiment.
So to begin.
Okay, so the new pre-lab style, it's much more focused on the generic tell me a summary. It's actually asking them where is this piece of equipment listed. It's showing a schematic of the operation. It's trying to probe, do the students actually understand the specifics of the experiment? Not necessarily the theory. The theory tends to be assessed elsewhere. We're trying to make them more familiar and prepared for the hands-on approach so that they get most out of that situation. Importantly, we asked the students what they thought of this. How did the new pre-labs contribute to their knowledge? And you can see that by and large, this was positively received. Likewise, for the instructional videos, this was very well received as well. And what we wanted to do was, now that we have built up all these resources, and I think, as Mary Frances said at the start, that don't waste a good pandemic, that we built up all of these resources now. Let's use them, let's continue to use them, and actually understand, asking the students what they thought would like to be retained. And you can see there that actually the students were most favourable of that instructional video so that they can help familiarise themselves with ongoing practicals. Because obviously there's, level ones are going into level 2 this year. They wanted to see a similar experience in that preparation. So that was important that we are retaining those and continue to use those even this year. So it's important to note that most students find the provision of these online components to be useful and contribute to their knowledge. The anecdotal evidence from the teaching assistants has indicated improved student knowledge and engagement during those online sessions, and even this year in those in-person sessions. And for that reason, we're going to contain these resources, continue to use these resources, including the videos. And the important thing for me, involving the students has been rewarding both for them as we are continuing to plan and change our content, and for me, because it knows that I'm making a difference and that they do appreciate those changes.
So I'll introduce Tassos, also from Queen's, and Tassos is a previous colleague of mine, and he is a lecturer in food science and nutrition. So Tassos, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, everybody. Thank you, Geraldine, for your kind invitation. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Now, after the very good introduction by Kevin, I'm gonna describe my experience from going through this from the food science perspective. I'm a lecturer in food science at Queen's, and we had to go through this in not only 2020, not only 2021, but even January 2022, where we had to deliver some of these practicals while we couldn't get into the building. So here it goes. Whenever we started that, we didn't have a proper directive what to do, right? So it was down to any lecturer to decide what's going to be the platform, what's going to be the way that they're going to deliver that, what is going to be the actual style, and the content itself, which was supposed to be based on the practical itself, but you could deviate in order to deliver it properly. So we had to decide the delivery platform, the publishing platform. For me, it was important to somehow distill the food practical process And we had to, for those scenes that they had to be shot, we had to create a shooting scene, to script, and it was important if I would get professional help or if we could get any help from any of my students, PhD students in that matter, research assistants. And that was important to plan, right? So in that journey, it was important to know where I'm going to be, if I'm going to be in the lab, or if I'm going to be in my office, or if I'm going to be at home. I had to create an environment around me that would be non-distracting environment, where my students are going to be, which in this case, I guess, would be their home. And if I would have to implement any live elements, any live Q&A, or even as the video was going, to be on the chat, to be somehow live on camera, to be able to stop it and answer questions. That was very important for me to understand at the very start and decide. And I saw in front of me 3 options. And these 3 options was the dry practicals, as I call it. So I shoot everything before, then I have it edited, then I have it published, and then probably I have a Q&A. The students are sort of, it's 100% remote content, self-learning for the students. And you had to do voiceovers, scripting, and so on. The other part was I was going to be in the practical room, right? And I would stream live demonstrating events that are happening, going through processes in the lab, whether it was a food extraction, whether it was a food processing on the equipment at that time live. And then probably we'll have a Q&A as well. That would be like a blog style maybe, where I would use my camera, my phone, GoPro, as Kevin said. The other option I had in front of me was for some modules and for some cases where there was compatibility to use a commercial software and to do this virtual laboratory that you will see in a little bit. So these were my options. In terms of delivery and publishing platforms, there were many. Every university is different. I used MediaSite for hosting the videos, and I used Canvas as an online learning platform. And there is a case where I had to use both Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Stream, MediaSite, and Canva, all working together, all putting that sort of content for the students. And it was important for me to understand early what I wanted to show in the video. It's a food science practical. It's supposed to be live. It's supposed to be engaging. It's supposed to handle some sort of food where you had either processing or some sort of an experiment, right? Done to actually record some parameters. So how this could be replicated, right? So I decided that I wanted to show the process first. I wanted to show the instruments. I used the combination of videos and photographs and voiceovers and subtitles and texts, and all of them were sort of designed in a way to show the process as much as I could. And I wanted to also show the calculations for the students and replicate what I would have said if I had in front of them and if I wanted to help them in the report. However, I did have also a Q&A at the very end of that sort of video show. Instead of a 3 hours video, we had maybe a half an hour only Q&A. Our students are between 30 to 40 per level, so we would see them engaging with the content. But I wanted to stay in show and not tell mantra. So I wanted to, don't be a talking head video as such. I wanted to have action. I wanted to have something to show. So our model at Queen's is not to have the students turning on the cameras. So that was a bit difficult for the lecturer as well to understand what's going on. So show and not tell, and don't make it a talking head video. The equipment, I quickly realized that 30 pounds, maybe webcam might do the same job instead of streaming like I do now with a more expensive DSLR camera. But when it comes to actual videos that people are going to see full screen, then I think a better camera is even better. Lighting is important. But to be honest with you, the most important thing is the microphone. You're now hearing a relatively modest microphone. But if you have the right soundproofing, if you take care of the echo, the experience of listening 1 hour and a half to a voice that is poorly recorded is the worst. So we have to take care about, I think, a few things about our equipment. On the shooting day organization, obviously some help, soundproofing, checking equipment is important. Editing, I think there is a lot of untapped potential with editing. And for us, for me personally, it was an area that I explored. I learned all these 2-3 years along the way. And I think now I'm in a better position than I was before. This is a snap grab, a screen grab from our videos. I don't have a live element here in terms of show you the video, but that's an electrophoresis of milk proteins. And you see here treating the actual gel, and that's an experiment that cannot be replicated at home. So that's why we had to show it on the video. That is me here with the extraction of antioxidants from vegetables. And it's important not to have only hands shown in a video, but show faces, introduce yourself, introduce others if they're helping you. So I think that's important for engagement. That's a commercial software by McGraw-Hill, microbiology experiment, quite a clever, let's say, software. It's a weird experience because you see virtually your hand touching things, like a virtual reality type of thing. But it's like a game. It's like a mini game where the students can be engaging and can be learning things along the way, making mistakes that are not going to cost as such, only in the screen. But they could run PCRs, for example. They could run different experiments from that. But it has to be a book behind all of that, supporting the virtual laboratory. So that's why it's important to see compatibility with the practical that you have in mind to shoot. For me, it wasn't that easy, for example, because I don't teach food microbiology. So getting back to all these 3 stages, I think the pros and cons is that in the dry practicals, the lecture is at home. You have to do like a complete production, let's say, beforehand, shooting and video recording and voiceovers and filming and all of that, editing, and then you are there maybe to support the learning process with a Q&A. That's very important. Not to have completely remote content. In the streaming laboratory demo, the hybrid model, it needs a lot of organization. The technology have to work super well. But however, that blog style type of content, it's much more engaging for the student. And you have to improvise. And that's, I think, you keep them there because it's a live element. It's like a live broadcast as such. The virtual labs, I've tried it myself. My students tried it in other content, microbiology and so on. It's good if it works for you. Yeah, if it works for you, it's good. It doesn't cover all the areas. For me, I couldn't, for example, use them. And there is a subscription behind that. Maybe a university doesn't support that as such. Now, the challenging parts, the hybrid models with the streaming, the technology, is not always working. Sometimes you have this blurry image. Sometimes you have like Kevin dropped out and then went in again. So, these things can happen, I guess. But the attendance, this is something that we could discuss if you want. The attendance in all of this during the pandemic for us, it was 60 to 70%, with 30% not engaging. And that was something that I tried, not even remotely, So that's what I tried to, let's say, flag, and we sort of try to work towards that. Interactivity is important for the people who attend, of course. So keeping them there, not to log in with 30 people in the class and log out after the end of all of this with 10 people in the class. So polls, quizzes, stopping the video, saying something, getting some feedback, going into the video again. All of these were very helpful in the food science sort of experience I had. So in terms of conclusions, Geraldine and everybody else, the video, you will hear from that, I think, in the course of this workshop, but the video is a really powerful tool. And food science from all the other disciplines, I think, is probably not the easiest, but one of the easiest subjects to relate, because everybody had to cook on that pandemic. Everybody had to have some experience with kitchen and with materials, right? So the approach that I had to the learning was to understand that rather than the technical approach of showing a perfect video whatsoever. So the platforms and the tools that we have in our disposal are really, really powerful now that it were 5 years ago, that it were 10 years ago. However, the technology is not the perfect solution, doesn't always work. You have to improvise. And this is my last one. The engagement and the interactivity are the key, and getting some feedback of what things worked for the students and what things didn't work. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and welcome for your questions.
Thank you so much, TUS. That was a lovely practical presentation of how you used video. So what I'll do now is I'll just screen share the Vivox dashboard. And so we have a couple of minutes for questions, and these questions that are already sent in might be relevant to both of you. So Kevin, you might take the first one there. How far ahead of the lab session is the instructional video made available?
So the video is available from the start of term, but the pre-lab assignment where they have to answer the questions wouldn't open up until the week before they were due to do it, because not everyone does it at the same time. And it has to be completed, that pre-lab has to be completed before they're able to participate in the in-person or at the time, the live online virtual event. The
second question there might be relevant to both of you. How are the videos stored and distributed? You might take this one, TUS. Finding a suitable repository is challenging.
Yeah, so in front of me, I had three options. First was media site. The second one was Microsoft Stream. And the third one was YouTube, believe it or not, but the videos can be unlisted videos. And the third one, actually, it was a good alternative. It's not public. The videos are not public. Somebody has to actually know the pretty complex URL in order to find the videos. So they are public technically, but they're not, sort of searched by any engines. They're not accessible as such. So if media site and if stream are somehow related with, complex processes within the university that you work with, I think I would say that YouTube, if you're not concerned too much about IP, YouTube is a good option for that.
Okay, that's very good advice there. Anything you'd like to add, Kevin? I see lots of questions, but we'll maybe just, if you have a last comment on that, and then we'll have to move on. Anything you want to add, Kevin?
No, I think I'd echo just what TUS has said there. I've used all three as well at different times. So again, it's just going to depend on the person and how they adapt to using it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the transcript with some of these options is not very good, right? Transcript is essentially free subtitles. Now, subtitles, I have done it before, they can be really time consuming. So if you have an automatic tool to provide some sort of, transcript, that's good, but you have to definitely go through the video because our voices are different, have a different background. Kevin has a different maybe voice. So, it's different, and a lot of funny mistakes, that you might find in the transcript if you don't look after that. Yeah.